In writing about figures like Elon Musk, how do you decide which aspects of a person's life to focus on in your writing, and how do you prioritize different sources of information?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, when you set out to do a book in particular, as opposed to a magazine story, you're dealing with so many people. In the case of something like Elon, there were sort of a few tasks at hand. One was to tell this biographical story of him, so I knew I had to go all the way back to his childhood, find all his girlfriends and ex-girlfriends and parents and mentors and things like that. And then you have to tell the story of these companies as well. And I have to get quite interested in the technology itself and try to go pretty deep on that. This is a very long process. I mean, for the Elon book, I interviewed about 300 people, and at the beginning it starts out feeling like this impossible task, and over time you just gather all this information and start to organize it. Always in the back of my mind, you're looking for stuff that pushes the story forward chronologically, but is also revealing about this person and goes back to your impression of their character.
And in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges in writing a biography, and how can you overcome those challenges?
There's probably some unique things to a biography. There's the challenges of just doing a book itself, which, like, everybody wants to write a book. It turns out to be a very hard process, which is why most people don't do it. And during the course of it, you have tons of highs and lows. With this particular book, for example, Elon didn't want to participate at the very start. And so I just had to make this decision, like, was I going to go forward or not, right? And it was a very hard choice to make. And you have these same ups and downs while you're going, where the beginning's exciting, the middle is sort of dreadful, and then you have to make this last push at the end. I had not done a biography before, and I discovered that there were quite unique things to that. I mean, one is you're obviously fascinated by this person, or you wouldn't spend all these years researching them, but it becomes a bit of whether you like them or not, you're fascinated by them, and it's sort of like an obsession whether you want it to be or not, because every day you wake up thinking about this person, you're always talking about them with all these other people, and I would say it's like a bit unhealthy. It's a very strange experience. You start to know so much about another person who really doesn't know that much about you, and you're thinking about them all the time. I used to have Elon dreams, some of which were quite horrible. And it turned out to be like a much more emotional process than I had ever imagined. And then just lastly, I don't think there's really like a perfect way to do this. You interview a lot of people, and they have different opinions on this person. They have different opinions of what happened in a room. Sometimes there would just be three people who were in a meeting, and all three of them had a different interpretation of what happened. It becomes the writer's job to sort of decide which person they're going to pull from the most, or how they're going to present that. And it's tricky because it's somebody's life, and you're trying to do a good job, and it's just reality is different for different people.
And how do you balance the need to tell a compelling story with the need to present an accurate portrayal of the person you're writing about?
For me, I come from a journalistic background, writing for The Economist, The New York Times, and Bloomberg. And obviously, even though journalists get a bad rap sometimes, I've always prided myself on being very accurate. I think my work sort of backs that up. So accuracy goes way up high. Of course, you want to make the story interesting and readable. In this case, with Elon, you don't have to work that hard to find drama or find exciting things to talk about. I mean, a lot of it was just me putting on the page things I had discovered, and they sort of speak for themselves. I would argue, I guess, one of the things I seem to be kind of better known for is taking pretty complicated technology and making it accessible to a mainstream audience. And so perhaps just my writing style itself was helpful in this task, in just bringing to life some of the engineering things and the technical things that people might otherwise find more difficult to read about.
And finally, what advice would you give to aspiring writers?
Well, it goes back to some of the stuff I talked about at the beginning. I mean, it's a very lonely job. I mean, it's a wonderful job. I wouldn't trade anything to have this ability to go into somebody else's world for some extended length of time where you get to fully live their life. It's an amazing experience to have this intimate feeling for how somebody else goes about their life. But, it is the actual process of writing is very lonely. You're trapped by yourself. You have an editor, but they often don't come in till sort of later. The single biggest thing is just being persistent. I just finished a new book called When the Heavens Went on Sale and had a sort of different experience. I wrote a bunch of it and then I put it down for a bit, partly because of COVID, and then tried to come back. And I just found it was so hard to like regain the momentum and that energy that you had. And so, I just always recommend, it's like, if you're trying to write something like a book, you just sit down every day, no matter what, and you write something. And whether it's a couple hundred words or some days all the words flow out, it's just that act of doing it every day, and you chip away. And, at the end of like 3 or 4 months, you'll be amazed at how far you've gotten.